All right, good evening, viewers. You're watching To The Point. I'm Preeti Choudhry. What you just saw was the politics of the price hike. Let's talk a bit of the economics of it all. Is it attuned with global trends? Are we actually paying lesser? Because the government is very clear that with what is global trends right now, India is paying way lesser where fuel is concerned. Or is it what the opposition says, that the government was just waiting for the elections in 5 states to get over to once again raise fuel prices? Let's cut across right now before we go across to our political panelist, to my colleague Shweta Punj, Deputy Editor, Business Today. She joins us, as well as Shama Mohammed, spokesperson Congress. Very soon, we'd also be joined by Tuhin Sinha, spokesperson Bharatiya Janata Party. Before we cut across to our political panel, I want to bring in Shweta and maybe talk, Shweta, a bit of the economics of it all, because we saw politics play out through the course of the day. We saw what happened in Parliament. The opposition staged a walkout in both houses on the issue of price hike. Most of them saying, see, we told you so. 5 state elections are over and now the government has raised fuel prices. But are we actually now paying way lesser with what global trends suggest?
Preeti, we would be living in a utopian world if we were expecting fuel prices to not go up. Remember that fuel prices were linked to market crude prices about 4 or 5 years ago. And since then, we've largely followed the trajectory. Having said that, in the last 2 years, when fuel prices did go down globally, we did not get the price cuts. Consumers were not passed on the benefit of lower crude prices globally. That's when the government used those margins to pay for all the subsidies that they announced, whether it's the free food grains or so many other things that the government came up with to soften the blow of the pandemic. Now we are in a very, very tricky situation. There's a war raging. Crude is over $100 a barrel, which is it's a very tricky situation for India, because India imports 80% of its crude oil requirements. So it puts the government also in a spot, and they did not hike prices for political reasons, of course, but this was a long time coming, and experts are saying that we could expect these prices to go up further, and this is going to have a cascading effect on the economy. But on the other hand, a big chunk of government revenues, whether it's the center or whether it's the states, comes from oil. Now, they can soften the blow by reducing the excise component in oil prices. And the indications that I am getting from the finance ministry, I don't think that will happen. I don't think that the government will take that path, which could soften the blow for the consumers, because the financial impact of that is very, very severe for the government, which will constrict its ability to spend on a whole host of schemes that they've announced on infrastructure spending, so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, Preeti. But at the end of the day, it's the consumer that's the loser in this.
Well, you're right there. Shweta, stay with me. I want to ask, we're going to cut across to our political panel, and then I'm going to come right back to you, to maybe get an understanding in what else can the consumers expect in days to come, where inflation is concerned, because like you pointed out, there's going to be a cascading effect. Shama Mohammed, I want to bring you in. With what Shweta was also saying, Ms. Mohammed, are you entirely right for blaming the government at this point of time? Because there are global trends which suggest that the fuel price is expected to go up.
Okay, please give me some time. First and foremost, let's understand one very important thing, that the global price right now is $108 a barrel. And in 2014 also, it was $108 a barrel. At that point in 2014, when it's the same, dollar per barrel, we were selling petrol at $71 a barrel and diesel at 56. Right. And because the excise duty at that point of time for petrol was 9.20 and for diesel was 3.46. That's the thing. But what did this government do is that they've increased the excise duty so much. Let me give you some background to it. In 2000, can you hear me, Preeti?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
In 2020, when the petrol price fell to $50 a barrel, they increased the excise duty from, which was, and soon as they took over in 2014, from 3 rupees, they took both of them to 18 rupees per dollar, 18 rupees per litre. That was the excise duty. From in 2020, when it went down to $50 a barrel, they increased it to 34 and 33, respectively, petrol and diesel, 34 petrol and 33. So just imagine, that is what your business correspondent said. When the petrol prices of the kacha tel or the oil price, world prices go down, we are not getting it. Now they are saying that there are these issues, subsidies and all those things. Did we not have subsidies in 2014? Did we not have subsidies in 2008 when the world economic crisis were there? Of course we had. And in fact, Modi calls the Congress government a welfare sort of government. I mean, we are the one who introduced the Food Security Act in 2011. I mean, we did direct benefit transfer. We have done so many subsidies out there. How can he say that? And also one very important point is that this war, then they would say because the war started, the petrol prices have gone up. The war started on 24th Feb. Petrol prices started increasing from 1st of March onwards. But why they increased today? Because till 7th of March, the voting was happening, and 10th the results came out. So they thought, after that we will do it. So they have cheated the people of India. They're robbing the people of India. This is really, I mean, this sort of government I've never seen. And that too for gas, 50 rupees. I mean, how is a poor person even going to have gas? He talks about Ujjwala. The gases in every house where Ujjwala is got is right now in the showcase. They put it, say, "Hamare paas ek gas cylinder hai, dekho, humko mila hai Modi sarkar se." They can't use it. No, it's just in there. I mean, this sort of economics will not work if you understand the basics of this.
All right, I want to cut across. We're waiting for Tuhin Sinha, BJP panelist, but I want to cut across right now back to my colleague Shweta. Shweta, there's so much talk of excise. For the layman, would you explain excise? Can you actually cut excise? What's the deal with it?
I can explain it to you. I mean, if she can't.
No, I just want to get a neutral opinion with Shweta. Shweta, come in.
Thank you, Shama, for the Shama Mohammed for the offer. But I think I can explain it, and I also want to counter her point on the 2008 pricing, the crude pricing, how they handled it. It was not the best way to handle it either. But let me just come down to excise right now. It's a tax it's a duty that's levied by the government on crude, on oil by the oil marketing companies, right? So this is done primarily, it's a source of revenue for the government, and the government has cut excise since November. It cut 5 rupees per litre in petrol and 10 rupees per litre on diesel. But they're unlikely to cut it any further. Having said that, there is room for them to cut it if they want to soften the blow. Now, I want to go back to Ms. Mohammed's point on the 2008 handling of high crude prices. That's when the government issued oil bonds. So what they did was they asked the oil marketing companies to absorb the losses that they were facing by not increasing the prices to the consumers. The government issued oil bonds to them, which are supposed to be encashed later, which is also a financially disastrous move. It bleeds the oil market companies, and it's not financially prudent. So this is something I've written about very recently, that will the government be forced, because the Modi government has also been attacking the Congress government on oil bonds, and that's one of the reasons that they cited, that a lot of the money they were trying to, a lot of the money that came in because of low oil prices was diverted to pay for those oil bonds that were issued by the UPA government.
I have a question for Shweta.
Okay. Well, no, can we just go one by one? No, Shama, can we please go one by one?
No, wait. Now you...
Madam, please go one by one. I don't understand. What is this urgency of talking over someone? Did anyone talk over you? No.
No, let me
I will come back to you.
Oil was
Can I just bring in Tuhin Sinha, our BJP panelist who's with us right now? Tuhin Sinha, can I just get Tuhin Sinha? Madam, I'm going to come back to you. You screaming is going to make no difference. Tuhin Sinha, the fact is, the meme going today is oil prices and polls inversely proportional.
Anything, as a journalist, you should, ignore things which are not consequential. The Congress loves to raise
Sir, it's very consequential. Are you actually telling me, are you making a joke on the people of this country and saying it's not consequential?
Not at all.
We are paying 50 rupees we are paying 50 rupees on a cylinder.
Let us get the essence
extra.
straight.
80 paisa has been increased today. You're telling us it's inconsequential?
No, I'm saying every time you question the timing, you try to deviate from the essence of the issue. Let me explain the essence of the issue. In the last 137 days, this is the first time that the price of fuel has been raised by a mere 80 paise. What has been the corresponding increase in the percentage of in the price of Brent crude during this time? A good 43%. Today, Brent crude is available at $113 per barrel. So, we have rather done everything to shield the poor from the impact of the escalated Brent crude price. But the fact is, the petrol prices and fuel prices always have to be dynamic. And at this point of time, merely by questioning that just because elections are over, that doesn't make sense. I think if you look at the inflation figures, our inflation figures stand at 6%. That is retail inflation. US has gone beyond 8%. So we have still managed to manage inflation and manage the economy pretty well, which the Congress cannot digest.
Okay, let's cut across. Shama Mohammed wanted to make a point and hopefully she's waited her turn. Let's cut across back to Shama Mohammed. Shama, if you can hear me, please make that point. Right now you wanted to counter. All right, we don't have her. It's amazing. You know, what is really amazing is with all panelists right now, when they cannot, they will talk for the time limit that they've been given. When they don't want to wait it out to listen to somebody else, they'll just get up. I want to cut across back to Shweta. You know, Shweta, you also said that the government made some terrible decisions when they could have softened the blow. They didn't choose to do so.
Right, Preeti. So that's been a bone of contention with the government, that they did not pass on the low crude prices at the time when they could have. But it was also a very difficult time for the country at large, for the world at large. So somewhere their justification that buffer was used to fund a lot of subsidy schemes, to fund grains for poor people, somewhere that gets justified. Also, economic activity was not as high as it is right now. So the impact was not felt it was not as inflationary. But now, with inflation anyways crossing 6%, you're looking at a high CPI, consumer price index, you're looking at a very high WPI as well. It's going to be it's a very, very tricky time for the government, because you have a war raging, you have you have the pandemic coming back. We don't know what's going to happen on that. Inflation is a very real problem. It's hurting people on ground. You look at the balance sheets of FMCG companies for the December quarter, and you look at their volume growth, completely flat, which is very, very scary. Because FMCG is one bellwether sector. Whether there's a slowdown, not a slowdown, that's one sector that does well. People buy food, people buy shampoos, people buy soaps. So these are things which are basics and essentials. And when you start feeling a brunt there, that means that things are not looking good. It's very slippery. So I think the government will have to do some out-of-the-box thinking. It's no longer as simple as just passing on the price cut. There has been no demand stimulus. The government has followed a very supply chain policy, a very supply side stimulus policy. They've not really boosted demand from a central government point of view. So they'll have to think of alternate ways. There are no easy answers. It's probably one of the toughest situations to be in. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, Tuhin Sinha, the fact is you're saying it's inconsequential to timing. No, the timing is not inconsequential, sir. 137 days, right, leading up to the campaign, 2 elections. March 7th was when 5 states voted. March 10th was the results. In exactly 12 days, you've raised the prices. And you're talking about an inconsequential raise. You're telling me 50 rupees per cylinder of LPG is inconsequential? No, sir, it's not inconsequential. It's a lot.
And this is a sensitive government wherever possible. When in November first week, we brought down the price of petrol and diesel by 5 rupees and 10 rupees. I wish, you had done gone on a crusade against the 11 opposition state governments which refused to bring down the prices. In Maharashtra,
they did cut. Delhi cut. Maharashtra cut.
allow me to complete, please.
Please.
In Mumbai, for the last 4 months, I have been paying 110 and 111 rupees for petrol, when in other parts of the country, people have been paying 95. So this was a brilliant chance for the Congress-supported state government of Maharashtra to give some relief to the people of Maharashtra, but instead it chose not to. And today, you know, inflation is a global problem. The price of Brent crude has risen across the globe. So I think, you know, this is a really extraordinary situation. But even when push comes to shove, if situation worsens from here, we are not close to the idea of again making a cut when it comes to excise duty. But please don't, project as if we have been insensitive to the poor. The timing is something which, at this point of time in the world, nobody would have a control of. And it's a good 2 weeks, the elections have been done and dusted.
12 days, 12 days from when the results come out. And like I said again, 50 rupees on an LPG cylinder is hardly but inconsequential. Ask someone who uses where it matters most, where it pinches most. But I want to quickly bring in Shweta back into the conversation. Shweta, the fact on state governments, doing their bit, how much can state governments actually do? Because this is an argument which can go on ad nauseum.
Right, Preeti, no, the state governments can actually do something. They can reduce VAT on petroleum products, and they can. So it's not only that the center can cut taxes, the states can follow too. But even for the states, petroleum products is nearly 50% of their revenues. So it's a trade-off. And since elections have just gotten over, we don't have state elections coming up now for the next few months. So I sincerely doubt, unless, of course, some of the opposition ruled states do come up with and announce some excise duty or VAT cuts, which would definitely bring down prices of petroleum products. That can happen. The states can play a role in this if they want to bring down, if they want to soften the blow for the consumers. But Preeti, I just I'd like the BJP person to answer this question. Yes, globally crude prices are skyrocketing. Agreed. But having said that, we have seen inflation going up for the last few months. It's not a sudden phenomena. I just want to know, what is the government's thinking on this? Because we heard the RBI governor talk about inflation not being a concern, and the RBI has maintained that stance all through, but it has become a big concern. So why is it that the government seems to be caught on the back foot on this one?
All right, well, whichever way you look at it, if you're coming down to the state versus the center, it's competitive when it comes down to softening the blow. We don't see either of them doing it. Caught right in that quagmire is nobody else but the citizen as collateral. Appreciate you all for joining us. Once again, would have hoped that our Congress spokesperson would have just waited out her turn like our other panelists. Thank you all. Up next is my colleague Shiv with the latest on day 27 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Stay with us.